Hello, and welcome back to Practically Political. It is great to have you with us. It is October 2nd, 2025. I am pleased, as always, to be joined by my partners, Ashley Davis, Kurt Bardella. Wow, there's always stuff to talk about, but whew, these days, I wish we had 3 hours. But obviously, I think we should start with the government shutdown. And I just have to say that once again, it shows how inept the government is that we can't, they can't agree on some pretty basic stuff. I think in the end, obviously, there's the blame game, and I'll get into the messaging in a second. But one thing that is guaranteed is that both parties will be held in lower esteem, if that's possible, by the American public. And I think the Democrats should have been saying healthcare, 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 healthcare for the past month, but as usual, their messaging is terrible. I'm hearing all the usual things about corruption and inflation and all this stuff, but it's not a succinct message. And I don't think it was advanced strongly enough and early enough. I think the Republicans are quite confident. They definitely have a stride in their step. Now, whether this is hubris, we will find out. But right now, it is definitely a bleep show. And I think the American public, as always, will be a loser. Though I have to say, I think government shutdowns, in terms of how impactful they are overrated because I think it's only about a third of the government that's actually affected. And I think about 70% of the workers actually stay on the job. So I think it's become a little melodramatic, which is maybe why what's happening. But this is the first one since 2018. So who knows what's going to happen? Who knows how long it's going to last? I think a compromise would be to agree on the Obamacare subsidies, but perhaps lower the ceiling for when people may qualify for them, because that's one of the strong arguments is that you can earn 400 or whatever percent of the poverty line and still qualify, and that there are subsidies to the insurance companies. But anyway, there's my spiel. What say you, Kurt?
This is one of those shutdowns where it's almost as if both sides kind of wanted it to happen for different reasons. Democrats wanted to have the shutdown so they could appease their base and show that they're fighting finally, I guess, which is an idiotic reason, in my opinion, to go into a shutdown situation. Um, Republicans, I think Trump wanted the shutdown because one, they think no one's going to give a crap really. The average person is not going to be impacted by this shutdown most likely, so it doesn't matter. Two, it gives them a tremendous amount of executive authority to, with Congress sidelining themselves, the executive branch can do whatever it wants. It expands the president's power, and he gets to wield it right now, kind of in an unlimited way. And they're all for that. So the White House thinks they get the benefit of all this extra power and an ability perhaps to dramatically reduce the federal workforce permanently, but really no political blowback for that. Democrats, the uphill climb that they have is they're trying to solve a problem that hasn't actually materialized yet. They are trying to say there's going to be a healthcare crisis if all the things that were in Build Back Better come to fruition. They're trying to say that your premiums will go up, healthcare will get more expensive, but it hasn't happened yet. The crisis hasn't happened yet. So the average person isn't going to go, yeah, shut down the government. We're fine with that because you're trying to stave off something preventatively. Most people don't care about this stuff or realize these things until they actually like happen, and then it becomes a political problem that creates the impetus for action. I think Democrats are once again putting themselves in a position where they're going to end up surrendering. They're going to end up capitulating with very little to show for it, and they'll look idiotic.
Yeah, I mean, Kurt, I believe in a lot of that. First of all, I was looking today. This is the 22nd shutdown in the last 50 years. I mean, I just personally think it's a horrible way to legislate. I mean, I think it's completely ridiculous that we're in the situation that we're in on both sides. I feel that the Republicans at least feel that they have the upper say in this message. I just don't think I just don't think it's good for anybody. However, what I thought was interesting, let's just talk about the votes here real quick. So we had two Democrats and one Republican that voted with the, I'm sorry, two Democrats, one independent that voted with the Republicans. So we need 5 more. And you see people like Gary Peters, Jean Shaheen, who both are up for reelection, Hassan. There were a couple others that probably start peeling off at some point, and that's where Thune probably gets to the 60, I would think. There's a general consensus around here that this is stops next week. I do think it's interesting. The Senate's back in tomorrow. It's out today. And then they're not gonna be in most likely all weekend. So there's not like a rush of urgency. And the House, I don't
They're
think it
not even
matters.
here. They
Well,
haven't been here all
they're
week.
in recess and they're coming back on Monday, but they're not gonna vote on anything because they're not changing this extension. I mean, I think it's unless there's some huge issue that happens, the 7-week extension is the only thing Republicans are gonna give up. Obviously, we've heard this a million times. Chuck Schumer and others voted for this in March. But I think, Kurt, you're exactly right. Of these subsidies don't expire by the end of the year, till the end of the year, and I think that there's not a crisis right now. I think that 100%, Dave, that there will be some sort of compromise, and you're probably exactly right with how you framed it, where they'll extend, but it will be different cap levels. But uh, I think that will all be done in a year-end package. And and it's just there. I don't think Thune moves off of his position of we're not gonna negotiate policy in this extension.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, Republicans, they feel like they have the high ground. So there's really little incentive for them to give Democrats anything other than to say, like, listen, we're not even going to talk about this until you pass a clean CR. Like, we're just not going to do it.
Yeah, that's why it's like Speaker was like, "Why am I bringing my people back and paying for them to come back to look at each other when we passed our bill?" And that's the other thing that's a little different this time is Republicans actually did pass this bill.
Well, and also another thing too, all the other this is going for Republicans, the other shutdowns have been over efforts to reduce spending. This is the first time we have is because they want to increase spending. Now, you can argue the merits on that, right or wrong, but I think that that is a big factor. And my prediction is that it's going to drag on for a few weeks, and then if the Democrats don't fold, and this is yet another example of how Chuck Schumer's sell-by date has long passed. He should have followed Nancy Pelosi, known when to retire. But on the other side, it used to be just lies that, okay, maybe they're 70 or 80% false, but they're almost 100% false now. And JD Vance was saying the big point is, oh, this is just a plan to spend hundreds of billions of dollars giving health care to illegal aliens, as he puts it. Well, and what his prime example is, well, if you go to the hospital, you might wait longer because there's an illegal immigrant in front of you. Well, notice he doesn't say the emergency room, which is actually what he's talking about, because by law, emergency rooms can't deny care to anyone. You can't check someone's citizenship when they show up in the emergency room. So that's ridiculous. And that's what he's getting at, is that there is a provision to reimburse rural hospitals, which by the way are in red states. 60% of this will affect red states. But I think your point is very salient, Kurt, that it's much harder to have a debate about something that hasn't happened yet. So I think again, it's just going to be another ramp up of divisiveness, polarization, another ramp down in America's faith in government. But the whole
I
thing
think
is
I
very
just think the
disturbing.
Democrats come off looking so bad in all these because they just look weak. I mean, I have seen no evidence to this point that Democrats can successfully win a messaging war against the Republicans. I see no evidence of that at all anywhere. And for them to engage in really what ultimately is a test of what is your threshold and tolerance for pain, right? Whoever has the highest threshold usually wins this kind of stare down. Democrats don't have a high threshold or tolerance for pain. They almost immediately fold, and there is no actual realistic objective here. Like, what is an actual attainable win for Democrats? And if you ask 5 different Democrats, you would get 5 different answers. The one answer they might say is, well, an extension of the Obamacare subsidies. Yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not attainable. So that's really not realistic on the table. So what is a win that lets you come back to the table, get this budget done, and the shutdown and save face? The answer is there is none. There is no win available for the Democrats, which is why going through this exercise is politically stupid on their part. And they're going to come off looking bad, weak, disorganized, and once again, just another complete abject failure to communicate successfully.
And they, just to build on what you say, the number one rule of negotiating is you can't just have a plan A, but you have to have a plan B. And they don't have that. And on top of that, the Obamacare subsidy extension is estimated to cost about 450 billion over 10 years. And the so-called big beautiful bill was supposed to cut spending, which obviously we know it didn't do. It ballooned it, but it does put another arrow in the Republican quiver, saying, "Hey, we're trying to live by the principles of our bill here." So I
Well,
agree.
I
To
think also,
fail, can they save any face? Is the question.
Kurt, I think also though, in regards to messaging, going back to Dave, what you were saying about the messaging on illegal aliens, without, getting healthcare. Again, this is what this 24-hour news cycle and what we're doing right now has done to us. The talking points are the talking points. And if you're not really paying attention to this every day and you hear that and you want to believe that, that's what you're going to believe, whether it's true or not. And so I think that's just the world. And Trump, as you guys would both agree with me, is a master at this type of messaging, that just throwing things against the wall and when something fits. It's like how many people are talking about right now the probably inappropriate video that was posted, about Schumer and Jeffries. Yeah, I mean, and today he posted it again saying the hat's going to continue to get bigger. But here's on a serious note, because I do think that this is impacting the some American people, and it is something we need to be sensitive about, because October 5th, they'll get a paycheck because that's for the last 2 weeks. And then they'll get the next one is October 20th. And I think that is really the date, because if they're not back by then, and listen, it could go longer, but that October 20th, I think, is like when you lose your next paycheck.
Well, I think
Obviously,
the
you get it
interesting
paid
thing,
back,
this
but
is the first shutdown. Because when you think about what the media ecosystem looked like in 2018 versus now, it's radically different now. In 2018, there was still a pretty unified media, legacy media, establishment media narrative that like Trump was out of his mind, right? I mean, they were pretty lined up against him across the board. Um, from broadcast media to cable media, it wasn't as fractured. Substack didn't even exist, right? Elon Musk did not own Twitter yet. It was just a very different world. And this is the first shutdown where you get to choose your own reality now and go to whatever silo that is, and only be fed a steady dose of things that you will likely only agree with, and not ever hear the other argument, the other side of it. And I think the challenge for Democrats is the Republican side of that space is much bigger and much better at it than the Democrat side. And that is one of the many inherent reasons why almost schematically now they lose these messaging wars, because the Democratic Party simply just does not have the media distribution apparatus to go toe to toe with what the Republicans have built.
No, I think that's very true. Well, good theme to end on for that topic. I wanted to move now to, I'm not sure what you would call it, but the convention, the worldwide gathering of 800 generals from all around the world to hear the Secretary of Defense. Oh, excuse me, the Secretary of War. I still have trouble saying that. Um, make his spiel, and then to hear the president go on with another one of his prolixities. But I would really be curious to hear what you folks thought on it. I think first, it's a little bit of a security risk to pull everyone away from their post around the world, B, have everyone in one building. But putting that aside, I don't really see what it it achieved in terms of really getting anyone more on board. They were lectured to. Pete Hegseth, whom I think these guys don't take seriously, they think he's a lightweight, was talking about fat people and wokeness and all this stuff. And then the president went on, and there really wasn't much meaningful said, except for me when he talked about bringing troops to cities. And this is different than the National Guard or ICE. The Positadas Act specifically prohibits the deployment of troops against American citizens. And there's no ambiguity in that. A lot of these laws that have been contested, there's some ambiguity. Not much in that one, but he talked about the enemy within. So if you came away from the speech, you might think, he's more concerned about taking care of enemies within his own citizenry than he is with, I thought, what the military was supposed to be here for, and that is protecting us from our enemies. But I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Why don't we start with you, Ashley?
Sure. I guess I took the enemy from within, meaning the terrorists that have come into our country. I mean, maybe it was a different message, and just how I took it, and that's where my brain goes. But listen, do I think the campaign rally was, necessary? Probably not. Do I think that his audience for that message, that maybe would have been a better place for like the 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old people that are just joining the army and the different branches of government. Obviously, I think everyone on here would want our country to be the best, have the best military that it can be. So whatever that means. But listen, it goes back to the Pete Hegseth has said from the beginning, the president said from the beginning, they want to make this go back. They want to make the department go back to what it was, World War II, World War I, then that strength. And this is, I guess, part of it. Again, if you look at some of those faces that have been posted online since, it's kind of very interesting. There's been lots of memes of what was going on in the general's head during certain times. But I don't know, Kurt, what do you think? I mean, listen, it was obviously overshadowed by the government shutdown, which was probably maybe a good thing.
Yeah, and also, Bert, before you jump in, I would just say, yeah, I agree that I think overall it was more of a nothing burger than anything, so I don't think it really hurt. And look, I do give the military credit under Pete Hegseth. Their recruitments are way up. They had been down. They started to go up at the end of Biden administration, but they've continued to go up. So they are getting more people interested. But I just worry about the messaging, and that they're focusing on the wrong things. And I have a hard time believing that if this speech were given in 1946 with Eisenhower, that you would hear a lot of the same themes. But what do you think, Kurt?
Well, I don't think there were many men wearing dresses in the military back then either.
I don't think there are many men wearing dresses in the military now.
No, I'm just saying, I'm not saying that there
that's like,
are. I'm
men
just saying
playing
those are the
women's
messages
sports.
he's
There's like
saying.
5 people or something in the country, and they just seize on it. Yes, but it's such a minor thing. But anyway, go ahead, Kurt.
I mean, I just think, again, it's everything is stagecraft to these guys. Everything is a reality TV show. That's what this was. It's like, hey, let's get all the generals together. Let's give them their marching orders. Let's tell them, this is how things are going to be, and either get on board, or as the president said, there's the door. Surrender your rank. Your career is over. As the commander in chief, he is entitled to do that. I've always felt that if you are out there having to broadcast to everyone that you are so strong and so mighty, that usually means you aren't. It's not a show of strength to me. It's a show of weakness. People who are truly strong, people who are truly powerful, don't need to tell everyone that they are. That's already just acknowledged. I think some of the stuff is just kind of clickbait. Oh, we're gonna have only men's standards. Every soldier is going to have to live up to man or woman. You have to meet the male threshold for strength and conditioning. Like, okay, whatever. We don't want fat people in the military. Like, okay. I mean, I don't know a whole lot of fat people who join the military anyway, to be quite honest with you, but whatever. Seems kind of counterintuitive, actually. Again, I just think it was just kind of, their version of right-wing machismo, on steroids per se, and that's kind of their brand, right? When I think about people like the Dan Bonginos and the Joe Rogans, it's this whole macho, thump our chest, very much out of WWE, and this is just the natural extension of that. Will it have any actual operational effect? No. Was it just probably a bit of a vanity ego play? Yeah. Uh, in a month, are we going to be talking about it? No. So, it's just par for the course. It's just yet, this week on the MAGA reality show, we bring in the generals. That's just the staging. That's the theater that they really enjoy. Um, where that goes from there, who knows? I mean, do I think it got? I think if you already like Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, you loved it. If you don't like him, you hated it. Now there's any real middle ground anymore.
Hey, Kurt, I do have to say, I may have told you guys this before, but my son doesn't ask me ever about political stuff at all. The only thing he wants is this UFC ticket on the front
Oh, for
on the
for
White
for
House
for
lawn,
White
just
House in
because he
June.
loves UFC. I mean, this whole generation, I didn't even know what it was.
Combat sports, man. People love it.
It's crazy.
It's legit. TKO.
Well, there's a great term which was coined um, from WWE called kayfabe, which is
Yes.
basically, fake. It's presented as real, but it's fake, right?
Protect the
And
gimmick.
there was a great piece about this, in the Wall Street Journal, but that describes so much of what the Trump administration does, right? I think it's such a perfect term because
Yes, it
so
is.
much of it is just it's all a game. It's, as you say, Kurt, it's all a reality show. And most importantly, who's talking about Jeffrey Epstein right now?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, no one
nobody.
cares about that anymore. That's gone. We are so past that now.
Well, I think the vote is still going to come up. I think that
They got the
discharge
discharge petition. They
procedure.
got the votes for that, so that will at
Yeah,
some
so
point,
I
Yeah,
once
know Kana and Thomas Massey are behind it.
yeah,
So
once they get through
yeah,
the shutdown, that will resurface in some way. But again,
yeah.
like no one, this country doesn't
I
care
don't
about
think
that. They
care.
just
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Hey,
it.
did you guys remember that Monica Lewinsky happened during the shutdown? I was on
oh
CNN this
wow,
morning.
I did
I
not
never
remember.
realized this. I don't think I even ever knew it. So the reason she had so much access is
because
because
they were said that all the non-essential employees were gone.
all the non-essential employees were gone.
Wow.
Remember Don or Linda Tripp was a detailee from
Right,
Yeah. Oh
because
gosh,
right.
his
Linda
normal
Tripp.
secretary
Jeez.
wasn't there. And
There's a name I
I know. Can you
wonderfully
believe I
haven't
even
thought of
remember
for
that? But
20
that's
years.
how Monica happened. I was on this morning with a congressman, a Democrat congressman. He was like, I'm like, well, what are you doing? And I said, don't let any of these interns out.
Oh my gosh, that's a
Unintended
great point.
consequences
I've
of a
never ever
shutdown.
thought about that.
That's a great
Yeah,
piece of trivia there, Ash.
that
Wow.
is.
I
Thank you.
know.
I
Fun
I I did
fact.
not recall that.
I
One
don't even think I
last thing
ever
I
knew it.
want to ask you folks about was it's very interesting because you've heard mixed thoughts about this, but as some of you may know, Pfizer has struck a deal to sell drugs directly, getting out the middleman. And as you may recall, Mark Cuban has a service where he
Cost plus drugs.
website, yeah, where it's just 15%. He posts the cost, so you have the transparency, and I think he charges $5 for shipping, processing, whatever. But it's amazing how much cheaper they are than if you went to your Walgreens and CVS. And I'd like to get your thoughts on this because I think overall it's a positive because the consumer wins. And if you look at drug prices here versus vis-a-vis the rest of the world, they're definitely higher. But also you need to have big pharma incentivized to keep developing the blockbuster drugs. So when I hear people say, "Oh, well, look how cheap they are in these other countries," well, they don't have big pharma. They're using our drugs that big pharma develops. So, what do you folks think about this? Because I think you can make arguments on both sides. Why don't we start with you, Ashley?
I actually think this is a pretty big deal. And maybe I do a lot in the pharmaceutical space, but also because the middleman, so to speak, of the pharmaceutical industry, the PBMs, we've been trying to legislate them into transparency for 20 years, really since the EpiPen happened. You guys remember the EpiPen issue? And no one's been able to pass laws on it because of just the lobby on both sides. And so I feel that this is something that it shows the private sector kind of, for the most part, figured this out themselves with some people like Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban's done it, Amazon's done it. But what the Pfizer deal was this week, really, which was important, is this was for Medicare and Medicaid. And so, one thing the president has been saying all along, which you're right, is why do we pay more than our other countries and, the most favored nations policy? And so, it does kind of get to this in some ways without undermining. I mean, I think that this is why Pfizer agreed to it, because it doesn't undermine the integrity of everywhere they sell, but for a lot of it with Medicare and Medicaid. I just think it's very interesting. I think it's a tipping point, and I haven't looked, but I would think that the PBM stocks have all gone down.
Yeah. Well, I think Big Pharma was kind of blindsided by this. They did not think that a deal would be made, and
The
it
rest of
kind of
them, the rest
yeah,
of
they kind of
everyone
had their
but
heads in the sand here
yeah.
on this, and then when they woke up and saw, oh, they made a deal, I think that it really shook them to the core and could have a transformational effect in the long run on pharmaceutical drug pricing in America. So, I mean, I think it's a win for the consumer.
Mhm.
I think that as we have seen over time, like these guys will make their money. Like like they're not hurting for money ever. And so I'm not really too worried about their bottom lines being impacted by this one way or the other. But I do think it is kind of a preview of like, yeah, this is where the marketplace is going anyway. And viable alternatives have been populating, like I said, in Amazon and what Mark Cuban has done. That's where it's going. I mean, we are more and more going direct to consumer in so many spaces now across consumer products land that's going to only continue. And frankly, even with the advent of AI, like our exposure to doctors is going to be limited because we are going to start using AI tools to tell us what medication do we need. These are my symptoms. Let me submit this, put my finger here on this test that will transmit digitally, and you will tell me what drug I need, and I will now go and directly order it without ever having to step foot in the pharmacy.
You can do that now with your eyes for your glasses. You can just take pictures, and I'm like, "Oh, I love that because I don't like the eye doctor."
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. All right, folks. On that note, I think we'll have to leave it there. But thanks to all of you for joining us once again on Practically Political. It's so good to have you. And we will see you next time. So, for my partners in crime, this is Dave Spencer. Thanks so much.